Welcome all. So today we're gonna begin a chapter on services. So services in Angular are basically some sort of a logical layer that we in our case basically shall use for communication with the server. They contain a logic and we make them as reusable as possible. uh, we also use them for the manipulation for any sort of manipulation with the data. So we create services, and then those services are utilized by other by basically by components, by classes, by whatever. Fragments from them are utilized and used to manipulate the data and to communicate with the server, and they're used for some other things as well in general. So, can look it up on the net, but like the definitions that I found, I really think that they are kind of inappropriate for anyone who is in the beginning stages. Rather, instead, we can look at them like this in a simpler way. And if you want, you can just type in services Angular JS. You don't need to look up services Angular 2. Just type in Angular JS services, and you will get the official definition and the documentation. Although, as I said, I find it a little bit complex. Anyway, so I tried to simplify it as much as I could. Anyway, so the thing that we're going to need to do is right click on app, and we're going to go ahead. Sorry. We're going to go ahead and right click on account, and we're going to go ahead and say new file. So right click on account, not on app. And here we're going to create a new file, which will be, oops. Oh, God. We're going to go ahead and click on new file again. And this will be account.services.ts. So press enter. This is an empty file for the time being. I have the code here, and Notepad does a horrendous job of. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to delete this. Notepad does a horrendous job with copy-paste operations. Like when you copy something into Notepad, it's all on a single line, which is horrible. Can't believe they can't make a proper text editor. Anyway, so you're gonna have this code. Of course, I strongly advise you to actually type it in yourselves. I'm only copying it for the convenience sake because it is much easier to just talk about the code as opposed to write and talk about the code at the same time. I mean, at a certain point in time, this code had to be written. It didn't write itself. So please, even though you have the code, try to rewrite it yourselves. Anyway, so let's go ahead and begin from the top. You have this, it says injectable. Oh, for God's sakes, what are we injecting? Well, injectable is basically a decorator which enables us to inject a class. What does this mean, inject a class? Well, it means that other classes just specify that they will use certain services, and Angular takes care of the way that they are passed to those classes. So classes, they specify that they will use services, and then Angular takes care of the way that those services are basically passed to those classes, that they are passed in a proper way. But we will talk about this a little bit more later on. I just wanted to mention it here. That is what injectable means. So once again, uh, classes specify that they will use certain services. So you have a class, and that class specifies, hey, I want to use this service. And then Angular takes care of the journey, takes care of the way that those services are passed to those classes. And that is basically what it means to make a class injectable. Okay, so let's go into. I hopefully did good. I hope that I did justice to that explanation. That's like my simplified version of things. If you want the official definition of an injectable decorator, go on to the net and type in AngularJS injectable decorator, and you will get some extensive documentation there, which you can feel, which of course you can read through. Okay, so next up, well, this import account, you know this, like from account.model. We did that before. Anyway, here we have our first example of at injectable decorator. So we can place this decorator before the class. This is the syntax that you need to follow. It needs to be placed before the class. That we, and once this decorator is placed there, then we are effectively making this class injectable. So this refers to this class, and if you placed another class down below, it would not be referring to that class at all. If you placed another class above, it wouldn't be referring to that class either. It just refers to the class directly below it. Anyway, this is something, this array, we're basically utilizing for the time being to basically act as our temporary database. But don't worry, we will get to the portion where we will actually have a database, where we will have an actual database. But I didn't want to like burden you with that straight away. So we're just using this as some sort of a simulation, but we'll get to the point where we'll have an actual database. Now this public method here, this is a private one, and this is not going to get accessed outside of this. And you have export class account services. It's pretty much all the functionalities of it are known to you. We're just moving something from one place to the other. Basically, you know this array and get all public method get all. It just returns all the accounts that are within this array. So that's all that it is doing, nothing else. Then you have the next ID as before, you have public create, you have public remove, all of these I have explained extensively and we have went over them. Anyway, the next thing that you will need to do is modify the app component TS file. So this one, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and Control A and delete everything inside. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy the one from Notepad. Hopefully it's going to copy in the proper way. Okay, it sort of did, but there's a slight modification that I need to create here. Account services, there seems to be a problem there. Let's just go ahead and save it and save this one as well. Come on. Services. Okay, there we go. So just a little bit of misspelling on my end. Okay, this file, you don't need to write anything for the time being. We're gonna get to this file in the follow-up tutorial and I'll explain it pretty much one line at a time and what on earth is it that happened here. Because as you can see, we pulled certain things from the app component class and they have been quite literally placed here in the account service class, which has also been exported so it can be reused elsewhere. We're just going to go over these things, but there is very little that is new here. We've just reformatted this in preparation to what is to come because we're enabling services. We're going to start utilizing services. We will use them to store the logic of our application. We will use services basically to store the logic of our application. And it's again, we are dealing with the separation of the code. So certain things will be performed by certain things will be performed by certain components, but now we are just transferring the logic of the entire application into the services files. Okay, so gonna bid you farewell here and hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial.